Hey, it's Adam with Backpack Theory Podcast, where we unpack past experiences to help define a better future. Literally, today we're going to be talking about defining the better future whenever it comes to Oklahoma City. And we are going to be unpacking a subject that is kind of a hot word right now, which is longevity. My guest today is none other than Gary Brooks. Gary, who I've actually known about for years in Oklahoma City circles, especially in the area of real estate development, is an Oklahoma-based real estate developer, a civic leader, best known for his work in the redevelopment of the First National Building, which we're sitting in right now. After decades and decades of building large-scale, high-risk projects, a major health crisis forced a reckoning with limits, faith, and stewardship. That turning point redirected his focus from external development to personal and community health, leading initiatives such as the Healthy City 2040 and the Oklahoma Health and Wellness Summit, aimed at addressing preventable health decline across Oklahoma and the boundaries outside of that. So, Gary, with
Well
that
said.
being said, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Welcome to the building.
It's beautiful.
Thank
This room, I think you were telling us before we jumped on, is called the Mint.
The Mint, yeah.
And tell us about, I know we were kind of talking about before we got on here. If you've never been to First National, by the way, absolutely gorgeous, especially the vault. You know, why don't you tell the listeners if they've never been to First National about some of the Easter eggs that we were talking about, or some of like the little treasures around the building?
Yeah, I've never heard them called Easter eggs, but the building was built in 1931, 11 and a half months, start to finish, the tower, 550,000 square feet. A lot of the stuff was hand painted, particularly the Great Hall ceiling. It was all hand painted. A lot of different areas in the going down to the vault, in the vault, the entrance. And so we had scaffolded the entire building. So I was able to get within a foot or two of this 45-foot ceiling. And you begin to see where the artists took some liberty with some of their paintings. So, you know, there's animals was a big deal. They loved eagles, a lot of birds, foxes, and all kinds of little things scattered around the building that are fun to find. So they had fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, from the story, and, you know, I had the pleasure of previewing your book that is coming out, Saddle Up. Me and my wife actually were on a flight, and on the flight, we got a chance to read it together. It's quite the cliffhanger that we got to actually experience some of your first-handed account of putting this, you know, or helping build this wonderful project and this redevelopment in Oklahoma City. And really, I think that's what's really interesting as we were kind of exploring some of the book is kind of seeing some of the transformation that happened in your life during that process. Because for people in real estate, people in Oklahoma City, they really know Gary the developer, you know? So, you know, if someone's hearing your story for the first time, how would you describe who you are today and how that's different from the heights of your real estate career?
I'm trying to remember what version of the book you would have read.
It's about the 30th version, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, writing a book, it turned out to be much more difficult than I expected. You've done it. You understand. So I think I'm on version 11 or 12 right now. Hopefully it'll come out sometime in 2026. How would I describe the tagline I use is I like the man who walked out better than the man who walked in. You know, it was September of 2015. I was really at the height of my career as a developer. I built about 3,000 apartments in Oklahoma City. Had three $50 million projects under construction when I walked in this building in 2015. So it was really, we were running well. Thought I was a good Christian business guy. I would have described myself that way. I think I would have had that reputation. You know, I taught men's ministry for many years, was very active in church. 7.5 years later, I come out the other end, completely devastated, almost broke, mentally, physically beat down, exhausted. Uh, and so people go, why did you like that guy better? God took me from what I like to say, in fact, I think I have a chapter in the book, from a lake to a river. I had spent my entire career building this lake. I didn't describe it that way. I wouldn't have understood that language back then. Your financial statement in my world as a developer, especially when you're doing big projects, that's everything. And that's your ticket to the table. That's how you get in. So I really thought to steward my giftings that God had given me well, I had to continue to build that lake. And that's what I did. Nothing wrong with that. It just wasn't the best way. One day the Lord said to me in my journal time, he said, I know you love me, but you're not in love with me. And I'm like, what does that mean? And it was just this, he kept using these metaphors on me because he rarely answers questions directly, He likes to make you think and work. And for me, it was journaling. I journaled about 2,500 pages through the process of the building. And so just beginning to understand the way I had been living my life. Again, nothing wrong with it. I wasn't doing anything wrong, but I wasn't doing, there was a much better path. And that lake metaphor resonated with me well.
Yeah, I've heard this story before and it really impacted me. And it's interesting as I hear you describe this lake, especially from, the real estate development standpoint. Whenever you're talking about that lake, and the metaphor is really just about, from what I got from it during that period of life, it was more about money. It was more about building financial wealth, building your balance sheet. And, a lot of us, whenever we look at wealth, it's normally you just look at what's in your bank account, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's like a major flaw. Like, I talked to, I actually mentioned to a couple guys that I was coming to meet with you, and they're just like, oh my God, that guy financially has done all, like, that was like the focus. And it's really interesting because we look at wealth being that big, big thing. And one of the quotes from your, because it's a grind. Building anything is a grind. And one of the best quotes I love from your book that really stuck out whenever I was reading it is, casting a vision is one thing. Living through the grind to see if it will work, that's something else entirely. And whenever you're building something, whenever you were going through that process, working on helping develop First National and that real estate portfolio, what was the mental and spiritual grind that you had to go through on projects like?
Well, I'm not sure you're ever ready. When you take a risk, you don't have to take risks, but when you do, in my world, seemed like the next risk was bigger than the last one. It's kind of normal. I'm trying to build. You get confidence, but stepping out and doing what ended up being the largest redevelopment in the state history, you can prepare all you want. It's impossible to predict what that journey is going to be like. And so for me, the grind was just hour by hour, day by day. I really wasn't, I got to a point where I wasn't thinking very far ahead. I'm getting up at 4:30 and I'm journaling 2 or 3 hours, not because I needed was some spiritual foundation. I was just trying to survive. It was just my way of trying to process what's happening. I believe the Lord told me to do this. I had a vision September 15 in the Great Hall, third floor. And I saw the Great Hall at Christmas time. It was a 1 second flash. And I took that as, maybe I'm being called to do this. It was really considered an impossible task. I thought I had a lot of conversations. I had no way of understanding what that grind was going to look like. So for me, it was just a daily. It's Israel in the wilderness. It's like you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but you just got to keep moving. It became I've made this statement. I think it's probably accurate. About the only thing I take credit for in this building is I just didn't quit. I mean, the miracles that happened, the way my partners were able to stay with me and got behind it, and the one thing I take credit for, I just didn't quit. That sometimes perseverance is all he's looking for.
Yeah, I mean, it just requires showing up, right? And I mean, that's kind of part of the, as simple as it is, one of the hardest things. I think, hearing the story about your wife, what she went through during the process, which we'll get into the health and wellness thing here in a second. But, I mean, one of the quotes whenever you were telling her about this project that stuck out to me, and it speaks to really why, whenever you're in a relationship with something, having that healthy spiritual as well as that physical and just understanding your partner. She said, you've always figured it out. Okay, let's do it. Because she had that, that faith, that understanding the fact that it didn't matter what happened, that you were just going to show up. What is it like, and I'm pivoting a little bit. What is it like to have a life partner that's that intimate, that y'all are walking lockstep together in faith, to where they see something that big and they give you the confidence to say, hey, you know what, we're going to figure it out. What is that like?
Well, we were, but we still had some maturing in our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know that sometimes until you're put under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
You want to know who I am? Put me under pressure. You hear people sometimes go, well, that's not me. I was just under pressure. I go, no, that was you. That was exactly who you are. You're going to know exactly who I am when I get squeezed. And I got squeezed many, many times. And so I remember one day the Lord said to me in my journal time, he was talking to me. He said, this was pretty early. I was still pretty excited. I hadn't hit that first wall yet of realizing I've really got us into something hard here. And the Lord said to me, what you're going to go through will destroy your marriage if you do not really begin to ratchet up some things. We weren't praying together every day. We weren't reading scripture together every day. Just hadn't done it. You're busy, you make excuses. And I took that warning seriously. And I'd like to think we would have made it had I not, but I don't know, because it stretched us every way. I mean, she saw her husband completely shattered. What does that look like? Still having confidence that, hey, he gets up every day. He's not staying in bed. I would do it again, if for no other reason, just because what it did, the way it strengthened our marriage, to be able to put up with the kind of stuff that she had to watch me go through, the kind of stuff I had to watch her go through. It's not easy watching your husband, everything he's built and created, crash and fall within a year, and then COVID hits. We're in the middle of this thing, and COVID hits, and all of a sudden, I'm trying to keep 600 guys. If one guy gets sick, we shut the building down. And my contractor said, we'll never get them back. It's done. You're over. It's over. I'm trying to finance the biggest hotel in this part of the country. And then COVID hits. Every hotel in the country shutting down.
It's wild.
How do you get financing? Nobody's going to finance a hotel in the middle of COVID. Who's going to do that? So, what she had to deal with,
right,
is every bit as difficult as what I had to deal with.
Wild. Especially like whenever you go through seasons, like the people you surround yourself with, the conditions you're in, what you put yourself through, on the other side is really what ends up turning you into whatever legacy God ends up creating out of your life, right? And it's really interesting. I remember another quote from your book, and I keep on going back to it because it's just so good. Faith is easy until the math doesn't work. And your wife, is clearly
a CPA. She understands math.
So she understands that. And so, as you were going through the project, I want to pivot a little bit into the health stuff, but, even before your health crisis, was there a moment where you sensed God asking you to trust him beyond what you saw on paper?
Yeah. I imagine that started pretty early. Again, my journal time was real significant for me because it really opened up this dialogue that I had never had with the Lord before, where I'm receptive, I'm open. I had 4 or 5 people that were really starting to speak into my life at that point. So I had a lot of ways for him to talk. There's so many. I'm trying to find a I'm trying to grab a good one. Uh, I had a plan, I had a vision. You don't do a $300 million project without a vision. About a year in, that vision starts shifting. Things don't start happening the way you had planned. And I was still in old Geary mode. So I'm now trying to control, because that's what I do. I control, which is really, the Lord taught me, is really manipulation. You know, I thought I was good at coercing and influencing. I would have used the term influence. And one day the Lord's going, no, you manipulate people. That's what you do. Manipulate. So he didn't hold punches with me. He had to. I wouldn't have listened. You know, people say, well, hey, what point did you surrender? I never surrender. Yeah, I did. He beat me down. He had to. He had to take me down and destroy every layer of ego I knew I had, and then another 10 layers I didn't even know existed, before I finally am on the floor going, is this what you were talking about? So probably not a good answer to your question, direct answer, but there were hundreds of moments where, you know, he had to just kind of show me, hey, you're not in control of this. This is way bigger than your ability. You have a job to do. Get up every day, keep moving, don't quit. But I'm going to do a lot of it.
It's remarkable. Just keep on showing up, keep on leaning the faith in. And it's, like I said, I've had the pleasure of previewing your book and going through it. And, hearing the story about all the moments, the ups and downs during COVID, whenever you had to find the financing, and then that finally came through, and then you finally get to that precipice of the building opening. And you had gone through the spiritual struggle, you had gone through the mental struggle, you had been torn down. And then there's that moment that I really want to kind of go into, which is kind of your new passion, where, and I'm just going to read it through the book, where you've finished the building, got through the moments, you've gotten the financing, your wife went through cancer, she had fought through that, and you're about to open it. And I want to read this whole quote out loud and kind of describe this moment of reality setting in, of why you're so passionate about health and wellness now. And so this is directly from Gary's book, where he's talking about right after they opened the hotel, and this is like the precipice of everything he's been working for. Even so, the celebration felt premature. We needed 1,000 people a day coming through those doors to make this project work. We were opening the most expensive hotel and apartments in the city. There was no guarantee. In 2015, I had cast a vision to my partners, but casting a vision is one thing. Living through the grind to see if it'll work, that's something else entirely. Truth is, I was physically, mentally exhausted. Spiritually, I was in the best condition of my life. God had broken me down and rebuilt me over several brutal years, just like we did with the building, which is so ironic how God does that. But physically, I was spent. Mentally, even worse. In less than 30 days, I'd sit through an investor meeting I wouldn't even remember. I had just turned 60 and honestly thought I was dying. There was no blood work or body scan data to prove it, but I knew something was wrong. And I wasn't just being paranoid. Back in November of 2019, I spent a night sitting in a chair with the thought that I was just having a moment of reflux. I'm assuming you're talking about acid reflux.
Heartburn. Reflux, yeah.
And 2 weeks later, and again, this is after you're growing. 2 weeks later, I was in the hospital prepping for heart surgery. Fortunately, I woke up with 2 stents instead of a full bypass. There was no time for a long recovery. I had meetings the next day. The stents did their job, and I made it to the grand opening, but getting the doors open nearly killed me. By the time we cut the ribbon, I was broken, my company was shut down, and nearly all my assets had been sold. I think whenever people look at the destination, everybody's like, awesome. But it almost killed you. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that season and this wake up call that is fueling the passion that is driving you today?
Well, I knew whatever created my heart surgery in 2019 probably didn't happen within a year. What I've learned in all my thousands of hours of study is my heart issues, like most people, starts in their 20s. Heart law, artery hardening. But I didn't have time to focus on it until we opened the building. At that point, you got 2 options. You either keep doing what you're doing. And I remember sitting in the Great Hall thinking, I'm going to die. I'm 60 years old. My mom had died in the heart hospital in 2018, heart problems. I have family history. And I just thought, you got 2 options. You either sit here and waste away, or you figure it out. I didn't know what figuring it out meant. I had 2 gyms I built in the building, so I started working out. We were living in the building, went to the gym, because that's all I knew. Had a lot of time on my hands, shut my company down really to focus on this building, all our staff and attention the last 3 or 4 years. So I had a lot of time, and I began studying health and wellness. At the same time, I'm journaling. Okay, Lord, what does this mean? Going down really 2 paths, trying to really dive hard into what is it? How do you get healthy? I don't even know what that looks like. I'd had no training, didn't understand it, and at the same time, I did what you told me to do. We finished. Is this it? Is this? Am I gonna? Is this my legacy? And I'm gonna die. Fast forward about a year. Started learning a little bit and really began to try to align what I'm learning in the secular health world with what I'm reading in scripture. Psalm 103, God forgives all your sins and heals all your diseases. And I remember thinking, I get the sin part. I'm good with that. But my experience is that he doesn't heal all our diseases. So I started wrestling with this. You either believe it or you don't. At the same time, I started getting healthier. And so I was having a conversation with the Lord one day. I was on a Telluride balcony. I was at a friend's wedding. It was early morning, watching the sun come up. I was raised, basically, I wouldn't have said it this way. I don't think most of us would, but many of us were raised as believers to think, hey, work hard, be a good guy, don't cheat on your wife, get your family to heaven. It's just kind of this earth's not my home. Yeah, I've got a responsibility, but my main job is just to be a good guy. And I'm on this Telluride balcony, and Lord, what's next? I'm getting healthier, but I'm beginning to understand what that looks like. My numbers are getting a lot better. And he said to me, he taken me to some verses. One of them was in Psalms talking about all the days of your life are written in the book before you were born. And I had interpretation of what that meant. But he pulled that verse up and he said, what do you think that means? Sometimes you got to look at the Lord and go, hey, you wrote the book. You tell me. Trick question. He said, Gary, we wrote your story 1,000,000 years ago. We sat around, Jesus, Holy Spirit, and I said, what do we want to accomplish with this life? Knowing the season I'm in, the time I'm in, what the world's like. And I wrote down, probably not work hard, be a good guy, and don't cheat on my wife. It's probably not it. Yeah, I've given you all power. Jesus said he's given us all authority. And Ephesians 1 says, all the spiritual blessings in the heavenlies are yours. You got all power, all authority, and everything you need to accomplish the task. So I feel like I'm in this conversation with him now. This is, you don't want to be dumb. And I said, I'm kind of popped off. I said, well, what do you want me to do? Eradicate homelessness? And I put a question mark. I'm typing. And he said, yeah, that's a good start. Start there.
Wow.
And work your way up. And I'm thinking, is this a joke? He's like, no, it's in a joke. So that began to reframe for me a lot of things. I was getting healthy 3 years in. By that time, by year 4, my heart surgeon said, whatever you're changing, I haven't seen this before. You don't need to come back.
It's fascinating.
I'm seeing numbers change in a positive way that cardiologists said were impossible. You're born with this number, LP little a, can't change it. I dropped mine in half. So I'm beginning to say, what is happening? These are experts. They're not always right. I'm beginning to study. By this time, I'm way deep down the path of longevity. Not a word I love, but it gets thrown about a lot. And I think a lot of people understand it just means living longer. Well, I'm not a guy who cares about living longer. I want to live better. I want to live healthier today, tomorrow, next week. Fortunately, it just so happens the things I do today and tomorrow and next week to live healthier will also help me live longer. And when I started bringing these two roads together, the secular world of health and wellness and the biblical world of responsibility, these things collided. And when they did, it was obvious to me, we got a lot more responsibility in this world than we like to think. And I began to dream bigger, much bigger than I've ever dreamed before.
Crazy. It's wild that, like, number one, you took responsibility for your own actions. I think that was one of the quotes in your book where you really talk about, like, it's our job to take responsibility. I look at the world today and, I do executive coaching. I'm heavily into AI, which we'll talk about here in just a second. But I think that we are in this position, especially in the Bible Belt, in some more conservative areas, to where whenever it comes to our health, whenever it comes to our wellness, the concept is what is always is what will be. What is always is what will be. We just accept our health. We just accept this path is what it is. The only truth that has remained present throughout humanity is God's word. Besides that, whenever it comes to our health, whenever it comes to us taking care of ourselves, that's one of those things that, if you don't have the vessel and it's not healthy, how are you going to carry out the mission? And it's remarkable to me, especially if you look at Oklahoma, based off of a 2021-2023 study, cardiovascular disease remains the leading cause of premature death in Oklahoma. Based off of that, Oklahoma experiences preventable decline earlier than the national average. And, you live in a very, very conservative culture. And I think that's one of the big things in, which is very interesting in the spiritual communities, religious communities, to where we're very, we talk about being strong spiritually. We talk about showing up to church. We talk about investing in people. But how do you now think about the responsibility believers have to steward their bodies, not as vanity? Because I think we always go to vanity, right? We'll go to the gym so you look good. So you can put some, but is obedience to what God has called us to whenever it comes to living our lives.
Yeah, the mayor's not a good long-term motivator. Looking good will motivate you for a month or two, maybe 6, but it won't keep you long-term. The only thing that will drive you to take care of your health is a purpose. Why? Why do I work out every day? Why do I watch my nutrition? Why do I track data for sleep? It's because I know that God's written a plan for me in a book. He will always fulfill his promises, but he's not obligated to fulfill my potential. He promised the Israelites the promised land. 2 of them made it. Wasn't his fault. It was their fault. He said the same thing to me. You want to fulfill your mission? Take care of yourself. I will do my part. You got to do your part. The problem is most of us don't do our part. I didn't. That's why I had heart surgery. I wasn't doing my part. I think I am. I'm playing the game. I'm building a business. I make excuses like, well, I got to provide for my family. It's my responsibility. I got to steward this business. Well, it's not. I was just trying to build a big lake, as big as I could. I wanted people to know that, hey, this guy's capable and he's a big developer and my financial statement's big. And, the Lord had other plans. Like I need you to be a river. If you're a river, I can flow as much through you as I want. You're not responsible for it. But he had to break my dam first and drain my lake before I would ever wake up and say, okay, I like your plan. Don't like getting there. Don't like going through the wilderness. But the promised land's awesome. Problem is, you got to do your part. And most of us don't.
And it's funny, going back to the full circle moment, and I'm going to show people how easy it is right now. If you want to know how to change your life today, it's as easy as downloading a couple applications, which you and I nerd out on all the time, whether it's Claude, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's whatever your choice is. You literally have one of the most powerful tools ever created at your fingertips that can tap into almost every medical journal article to understand how you can take action literally today. And so I don't know if you guys are going to hear this. I'm going to try to hold it up to this, but I'm just going to open ChatGPT right now, okay? And I'm going to go into it and I'm going to ask it a question, right? Because Gary and I talk about this all the time. Like, I'm just going to ask it a question to say, hey, based off of where I'm at today, if I have the potential for heart issues long-term, what are 3 things that I can start doing today on my personal time to prevent a heart attack or heart disease? And let's see what it comes up with. Hey, chat. So I'm sitting here on my podcast with Gary Brooks today, and we're talking about cardiovascular disease, heart attacks. And, in Oklahoma, one of the leading causes of death are cardiovascular issues. If I wanted to start today to kind of reverse that, what are 3 things that I could do in my daily routine to dramatically decrease my chances of heart failure, heart disease, or something in the cardiovascular realm?
All right, let's keep it practical. First, daily movement's key. Think of at least 30 minutes of brisk walking, biking, or anything that gets your heart rate up.
Workout. Oh, keep on going. I'm sorry.
No worries. Alongside that workout, focus on a heart-healthy diet. More veggies, fruits, whole grains, and healthy fats like olive oil or nuts. And last but not least, prioritize your sleep. Restorative sleep keeps stress down and gives your body time to recover. Those 3, day in and day out, will put you on a great trajectory.
So whenever it comes to that, if you're looking at me, I'm 37 years old, Gary's 60. What are some things that I should do today between the time getting to Gary's age that's going to really help me whenever it comes to that longevity? Give me another 2 things I could do.
All right, looking toward longevity, 2 more things. First, build strong social connections. Quality relationships are shown to boost long-term health. Second, keep your brain active, whether it's learning new skills, reading, or problem solving. Staying mentally sharp helps you age well. So keep those relationships strong and keep your mind learning.
So I'm pulling that out just as a thank you, by the way. I really appreciate that. I'm pulling that out just as a general example, because those are very logic driven things, work out, get your sleep, reduce your stress. It's funny because you were talking about journaling.
4 pillars.
Yeah, there's 4 pillars, right? It's not that complicated. And then one interesting thing you said earlier was journaling, which I encourage all my clients to do because it increases your cognitive function, decreases your cognitive decline, especially if it's by hand. There's a lot of studies and research that have come out over the last 5 years that really kind of point to that more and more. But it's that easy.
Yeah, where AI gets excited is when you start putting in your specific information,
Biomarkers in your wearables.
your blood work, DNA tests, anything that I get from testing, scans. I do DEXA scans, CT angiograms. I tape every conversation with a doctor. I download that into Claude. I take it to an extreme because the more Claude knows about me, the better answers I get. If I took 3 Advil today, I may have put that in Claude. I might have said, hey, because Claude knows I've got asthma issues. Claude taught me for 25 years, I've been to ear, nose, and throat people. I've been to pulmonologists. Nobody's ever said to me, hey, you've got an MTHFR gene, don't take Advil. Claude did. So I tell people, when you ask general questions, you're going to get good general answers. Those are good general answers. The more detail you get,
Bingo.
the more it knows you.
Bingo.
And it will give you some of the best information that you'll never get from, in some cases, even the smartest doctors. Doctors are specialists now. We need them. But their main job, medical is primarily there to keep people from dying. It's a great sick care system. We have a fantastic sick care system. I'm alive today because we have a good sick care system that saved my life. My wife's alive because we have great people who are good at keeping, when people are sick, they're not so good at keeping us well for a long period of time. It's not really their job. If I need a specialist, I go to an ear, nose, and throat. Well, the ear, nose, and throat person is not an expert on gut microbiome. It's a gastroenterologist. Well, guess what? The gut in my lungs and my sinuses and all of this is interrelated. All of that has to be known. Claude helps me with that. Claude can bring all that together. When I need a specialist, I have one in what I call my health orchestra. I use that term a lot. So AI is the great equalizer, but you got to know how to use it, and the more specific you get, the better.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as, you can give it information, it can synthesize that information, and then you can go bring it to a doctor. Actually, one of my clients, which we both know, he has a virtual wellness clinic where he goes around, does a lot of blood analyzation, hormone therapy. And man, it's just kind of remarkable whenever you just go get an actual specific blood test for specific blood types, and then you go and read a comprehensive analysis of that, and then you can take that information and put it into AI and how fast it can synthesize it and identify potential biomarkers in the future that could affect you. It's really interesting how, if you work hand in hand with it and you give that information to your doctor, it allows your doctor to actually become more effective whenever it comes to things. But the one area I don't want to pass over, which is what you said, is all of this boils down to personal responsibility, and we have access to this information, and we have a responsibility, if it's out there, to actually go and start acting on it versus just kicking the can down the road. Because especially if you're a high achiever, if you are a developer, if you are an executive, one of the leading causes, whenever it comes to chronic occupational stress, is sustained, and that sustained high demand significantly increase cardiovascular risk because you're constantly under stress. You constantly have high cortisol levels. And so you got to figure out, how do you exercise and how do you take care of yourself? It's not just about the doctor. It's about how are you actually taking care of your physical health consistently.
Yeah. I tell people, you don't want AI to replace your doctor.
No.
You're always going to need experts. But what AI can help you do is become a partner, a much better patient with much better questions. In my generation, I'll be 64 in a couple of weeks. My generation and my parents, we relied on doctors. We were not aggressive, and we were, I grew up in the generation of Cheerios are heart healthy. That was Cheerios are not heart healthy. I can promise you. There's nothing heart healthy about Cheerios.
They make you round.
But we were lied to, and so we bought this. My generation and my parents, we were just inundated with this crazy stuff that we bought into. Your generation is going to be a much better partner with medical people, because you're going to have access to these tools that we just didn't have. I'm lucky. I had a major medical issue and hit a crossroads and I had some time that forced me to figure this out. But it does take, it takes a little bit of time. The more you do it, the easier it gets. In my summit, what I tell people, we really push two things: personalized health and wellness. It's all about personalization. I talk about be responsible enough to become your own best healthcare advocate. You must be your best healthcare advocate, not your doctor's. I'm the conductor of my orchestra, and I built a team of experts I call my orchestra. I have specialists that I know, and I have specialists I'll never meet. People out there that I'll never meet that I've learned to trust. And I use them as my experts, but I've got the baton. They don't. I'm responsible. I'm in charge, and they're going to build the music that I want for my body. Your orchestra is going to be different. Your fingerprint's unique. Your eye's unique. Why isn't the rest of your body unique? God made us unique. Your gut microbiome is not the same as mine. Yet if you go to a doctor, they're going to give you probably the same drug. It's the best they know.
Right.
They're doing the best they can for us.
Right.
You know, I won't go too far down this path, but it hit me one day. The medical profession is, we're capitalists. We'll provide whatever service and product the market's going to demand. Well, guess what product and service we have demanded of the medical profession? We're unhealthy. We make bad choices. We're going to come to you sick, and we need you to keep us alive. They didn't build the system. They simply responded to our bad choices.
Exactly we asked for them. Yeah.
It's easy. You get online now, and everybody wants to beat the medical profession up. I'm like, we created the system.
Exactly
They're
right.
just simply providing what we require. I go to the heart hospital. There's an awful lot of people in there that have made real bad choices their entire life.
Yeah.
I was one of them. I mean, I made bad choices. I was not responsible. I didn't manage stress well. I didn't even know my body was under stress, so I started wearing a glucose monitor. And I started seeing what stress does to my glucose, start studying sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous systems, what happens to cortisol when you're under stress. Well, that's fine if it's 5 minutes, you're in fight or flight mode. What happens if you're in it 14 hours a day? You're going to kill yourself.
Yep.
You're literally destroying your body. And so I look at what scripture says, and I'm like, that's not the intention. It's easy to say, God, why aren't you fixing all these diseases? I don't know what God says to you, but what he says to me is quit destroying your body. Take care of yourself better, and I can help you.
Everybody wants a quick fix, right? You look at the Ozempic thing, you look at all of these different things. It's I forget what it's, anyway, that, the underlying thing on that, semaglutide, yeah. Anyway.
Tirzepatide, semaglutide, all the GLP-1s.
Yeah, my brain went whoop. But on that, we want a quick shortcut to fix a problem that we started generating whenever we were in our 30s, for goodness sake. I mean, what you ignore in 35 normally shows up at 65.
Right,
and now, with kind of some of the extra things that we have going on in the world, and whenever it comes to our food supply, what's in our foods, I mean, that 35, if you're not taking care of yourself, is going to show up a lot sooner than 65. And so, a question for you: if you're someone that I think a lot of people admire, they look up to, that are my age, especially in the development industry, people that are currently measuring their self-worth by their net worth, if you will. But if you were going to go back to the Gary Brooks in his 30s, what prevention tools would you invest in now? And if Oklahoma continues to rank near the bottom in health, is a healthy workforce actually the most important infrastructure that the state needs right now?
Well, we don't realize what it costs us to be unhealthy. As a business owner, I never thought about what it costs me in productivity loss, insurance costs. We just accept this. I woke up one day and I said, why do we accept being last? At what point do we look at each other? Most of my friends are in Oklahoma City. I don't think if I set most of them down and said, hey, tell you what, we're going to be last in this, and we're just going to accept it, right? We would go, no, why would we accept being the worst in the country at anything? But we've done this. We've accepted it. We are the worst in almost every category. I just woke up one day and said, I got to do something. I don't know what it is. I'm just one guy. But if I can influence a couple people, maybe they can influence a couple people, and over 10, 15 years, maybe we can make a shift. What would I tell 30-year-old? I'd probably tell myself two things. I've got to take responsibility and think long-term, not short-term. Comfort is the greatest weapon of the enemy. The enemy is going to keep me comfortable today. What do I want today? Well, I want that burger. I want that cheesecake. I'm under stress. Well, when you're under stress, guess what? You're going to eat poorly and you're not going to sleep well. And so, I would probably say, begin to understand what chaos is happening in your world, what stress is causing, and begin to address that first. Jeremy Kubicek and I he's one of my keynotes, and we're working on this principle off of the book he wrote called The Peace Index, to try to tell people, before you ever walk in a gym, before you ever mess with your diet, figure out your world first. Because until you can figure out where you're not at peace and you got chaos and stress in your world, you're not going to exercise well. You're not going to eat well. You're not going to sleep well. So don't start there. Start with stress. That's the first thing I'd tell them. Begin understanding what stress is. And probably the other thing I would begin to try to impress upon him, a financial statement is fine. Again, I don't knock the old Gary the way I did stuff. I just say there was a much better way. I think I talk about in the book, the Lord told me one day, he said, hey, you've spent your whole life trying to build this financial statement. Build a kingdom statement. What is that? What's a kingdom statement? Well, a kingdom statement has a lot of assets that I don't have on a standard financial statement. I mean, for people to trust you, you know what that's worth? If you could place a value on a financial statement of trust, it'd be worth a lot more than anything I've ever had in way of cash. There's just a lot of assets that the Lord thinks are important that we don't ever think about. And I would try to impress upon him, begin to understand there are other assets that you need to be focused on. They're a lot more important than money. When I really began to think more like a river and not a lake, everything began to shift for me. Life started getting easier. My mom used to call it get in the flow. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't have a flow in a lake. Nothing's moving in a lake. Everything's stagnant. I'm just trying to build as big as I can. But a river, I don't have to supply the water. He's supplying the water. And the cool thing is, if I want it, it's right there. Take it.
Yep.
What do you want? Just reach down and get it. But it also serves people 10, 100, 1,000 miles down. My lake only serves the people around my lake. A river can serve millions of people.
It's really interesting as this conversation is developed, and as we go into kind of the last 10 minutes. Your lake at the start of the story was really about the finances, and then as you start kind of looking into it, it's like, what if you looked at the lake as your health? What if your health was the river? What if because the longer you're healthy, the more impact you're going to make. Like, what good are you worth tons of money and having tons of comfort, but you're overweight, you're on life support, you can't go anywhere, you can't invest in anybody because you're unhealthy at 75. Yeah. Like, what good are you to anybody? Like, how are you actually going to make an impact? So, your health, spiritual, mental, which you're talking about with Kubicek, I've had him on the podcast before. Really, really good stuff. But, your lake is a lot more than just your financial statement. Your lake is about your entire being. It's about your mental health, your spiritual health, your physical health. All of it is intertwined. And if you're not healthy, it doesn't matter how big your lake is. You got to be in a healthy position to where that longevity part, which I really love that you're talking about in this initiative you have for the city, you got to be healthy to make that long-term impact. And you're going to make a longer-term impact the older you are. And, I think that a lot of people, whenever they think of this longevity term and they think about wearables and they think about biohacking and they think about all these other things, they think about Silicon Valley and they think about Miami and they think about all these different places. And, I look at the quote by Matt Caberline, who's one of your keynotes that's coming in. The goal isn't to live longer at all costs. The goal is to extend the period of life spent healthy, functional, and independent. If you look at Oklahoma, right, and you look at the statistics, we're not doing that well right now. So, in a place like Oklahoma, how do you think that this transformation is going to be possible? And what would you describe as the vision for the Oklahoma Health and Wellness Summit to kind of bring that attention to Oklahoma City being a light on a hill, if you will, to actually start encouraging this initiative?
Well, I realized when I started, a real estate guy starts talking about health and wellness, I start to roll. What does he know about health and wellness? People, everybody's heard this before. It's not an exciting topic. In my research, I came across Fort Worth from about 2013 to 2019. Mayor Betsy Price at the time, mayor for 10 years down there, had a similar idea. They were 185th on one scale of the least healthiest cities in the country. And in about 7 years, moved to 31st. They literally moved Fort Worth from one of the least healthiest, one of the healthiest cities in the country.
Wow.
So I called Mayor Price. I go, hey, how did you do it? And we've had great conversations. She's going to come in as a consultant to give us advice. She made a comment to me. She said, your business people have no clue what this is costing them. They have no idea.
Fascinating.
I don't have all the answers how it's going to work. All I know is in Oklahoma, when we decided to do something, we do it. For some reason, whatever we've been doing just hasn't stuck. And I don't know why. I've only been in this world full time about 4 years. I'm still learning, but I know that when I began to make a shift. When I flipped a switch, it said, my best days are still ahead of me. I'm 64 in a couple weeks. This is not my legacy. It won't be. My goal is to die someday and someone goes, wasn't he in the real estate business? Didn't he do real estate back in the day? My best days are still ahead of me. I'm not unique. I'm just a guy. There's 100,000 people in this town that I believe you give them the right incentive, the right motivation, the right tools, the right information. A lot of it's just knowledge. So much of this is just knowledge. I was 60 and about to die. I didn't know what stress was doing to my body. I didn't realize what snacking at 8:30 and 9 o'clock did to my body. I didn't understand what a glass of wine at 8:30 and 9 o'clock at night did to my sleep. I didn't understand this. And when I began to understand and I could see it, and I began to see the benefits when I started shifting, like, I'm not going back. At some point, I had seen enough miracles. I remember being on the floor of the Great Hall, 2019. No, it's 2020. COVID had hit. I'm like, Lord, I need $187 million. Like, we're going down. Most people don't ever get to pray for $187 million and really need it. But I said to him, I've seen too much. I'm not going back. You've proven to me that there's a whole nother world out there with you that I didn't know existed. Wow. So I said, I'm going to get in crash position because we're going down. I didn't think we were going to make it. Point is, I'd seen enough. And sometimes that's what it takes for you to shift. There's enough people in this city. I think there's enough people in this state when presented with the right information, along with all the other stuff people are trying to do. I mean, I'm just one guy with an idea.
Mm-hmm.
I happen to be a guy who isn't afraid to push an idea hard every day for the next 10 years. Enough people are going to say, I'm in. And there's enough people now that are already doing it. You can shift an entire society with 10 to 11, 12%. There's a tipping point. It's proven. We know this can happen. People say, why 14 years? Like, because if I can get 1% a year, at the end of 10 years, I've got a compounded almost 11%. I think that's a tipping point. And I believe it's going to happen. I absolutely believe that enough people are going to get behind it. Enough people, we're at the greatest time in the history of the world to be alive. We now got access to every single medical paper ever written on our phones. We got to know what to do with it because there's a lot of bad information out there. You know, these biohacking and all that. What I tell people is, hey, look, ignore all that. Go for the low-hanging fruit first. You know, don't be trying to worry about if you're taking enough vitamin D. Let's just worry about the low-hanging fruit first. You got to get off the couch. Start with the easy stuff. You got kids and a family and a job and you got stress. Don't be trying to get into biohacking if that's not your thing right now. You just got to figure out how to get healthy in the world you're in right now.
It's good. Yeah, it's funny. Like the first 3 suggestions that AI gave us was not to go start taking a bunch of vitamins and get blood tests. It was literally just start walking 30 minutes a day.
Moving.
Just start moving. Just start basic and then take ownership over your health. And, you know, I know that you're working with the mayor on, I think it's called the Healthy City 2040 project.
Yeah.
And some of the things that you're doing in there, I know that you're working with homeless. You said before we started the podcast, you're spending 15, 20 hours a week kind of trying to solve the homelessness crisis and some of the other things. Tell us a little bit about more than just this health and wellness conference you're putting on. What are some of the other initiatives that you see coming together whenever it comes to the goal to have Oklahoma City as the healthiest city by 2040?
Well, as a believer, I want to see Isaiah 60, city on a hill. What is a city on a hill? Well, that's an example to other cities, maybe in other countries. A city on a hill is a healthy city. What's a healthy city look like? It's physical health. It starts with mental health. I mean, mental health is the biggest health issue most of us deal with. It's poverty. It's homelessness. It's domestic abuse. It's incarceration. What would a healthy city look like? The mayor asked me to be a part of a Key to Home, which is a board that the city created to try to get our arms around this homelessness issue. The most complicated thing I've ever seen. I thought it was a board position. And before I realized this, there's a lot more than a board position. There's a lot of people working on this. As a business guy, I just kind of sat back and said, are we making improvements? Are we seeing noticeable improvements? If at some point more people aren't getting healthy, I'm going to look at my plan and go, hey, it didn't work. You got to see improvement. I want to see results. My objective in being involved with Key to Home is I want to try to bring some first principles into that world and just try to say, is there another way? Sometimes you just got to look at a situation and go, what have we not thought about? What's some creative things that we could do? So homelessness has taken quite a bit of my energy and time. I love it. It's a fascinating, complicated issue that needs to be dealt with. But it's all part of this healthy city. I just know that when I was not healthy, I didn't have the energy to go spend 15 hours a week in homelessness. I didn't have it. Couldn't have done it. I have it now because I'm healthier than I've been in 25, 30 years. And so I'm one example to say, if you get yourself healthy, what else do you have energy for? What else do you have time for? What could be done in your city if 100,000 of us shifted and got disease out of our body and now had the energy to go do other things. What could happen?
It's remarkable. It's funny. The second question we asked AI, one of its recommendations was, who are you surrounding yourself with? What is your circle of influence? And so you talk about that 100,000 people, you talk about that awareness, and we look at this upcoming conference. I really want to tell you how much I appreciate you being, a guy in his 30s that lives in a city. And I'm like, man, I would love to have more healthy activities. I'd love to stay in Oklahoma City. I think you're seeing more and more young people want to stay here. But that healthy initiative, I feel like the more that we can focus on that, the more that we can build it, the more we have leaders that step up to the plate like yourself that are willing to be the trailblazers. That can be kind of scary, especially whenever you're a real estate developer and all of a sudden you're going to step into health and wellness. I just really want to commend you for it and thank you. And especially your approach whenever it comes to spirituality, taking care of the body and making sure that, you keep that as the forefront. I really, really appreciate you. And real quick, when is the Health and Wellness Summit? Give us a few little details on it in closing.
March 9th and 10th, healthycityinitiative.com. You can sign up. Got a slot for about 420 people. Got an incredible lineup of speakers. It's basically my health orchestra, the people that I look to, many of them. Dr. Matt Caberline's coming in from Seattle. I've got Dr. Brian Kennedy coming from Singapore, who's coming in here, who's developed probably the best biological age clock anyone's ever developed. He'll roll that out here in Oklahoma City. Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation, incredible group there. I've got Dr. Benjamin Miller and Dr. Arlen Richardson's going to be speaking. I've got cardiologists coming. Jeremy Kubicek's going to roll out this Peace Index stuff that we've been working on. So it's really going to be a time where our goal is to give people actionable tools they can take to begin building their own personalized health and wellness strategy to become their own orchestra, their conductor of their own healthcare orchestra. Empower them, give them some confidence and some tools to begin implementing, begin to start this process. What might that look like if we begin using the tools that were available to learn, get information, and start to getting healthier?
Good. Yeah, I think you're spot on. I've been working with some people developing an app to where you can kind of dump all of your information in there. And it's really interesting seeing what you can create at the speed you can create it with AI. Yeah. And so I agree. I think giving people practical tools that you can actually apply in your life on a daily basis that doesn't kind of takes the friction and the research out of it is so important. And so in closing, speaking of which, I asked two questions and then we'll do our summary statement. First question, if there was a book or a tool that you would recommend to someone that they should read, just a starting point whenever it comes to how to live a long and healthy life, what besides the Bible, of course, can't go to that. Besides that, what is a book or a tool that you would tell someone that they should look into? And why?
Well, we've hit on the tool. There isn't a better tool than AI right now.
Yeah, which platform do you use? Do you like Claude the best?
I use Claude, but I think they're all pretty good. The level of which they're now, they put these things through medical exams to see how much they're progressing. It's shocking how good they are. It's absolutely shocking. So there's not a better tool. I don't know of a book out there. OptiSpan with Matt Caberline is a place that I go to. There's a lot of really good resources online. I don't like to tell people who you need to go listen to because you got to kind of build your own orchestra. What I tell people is, though, look for people that are humble, look for some humility. You want experts with confidence, but we know a lot less about the body than we know.
Yeah.
And so I want experts to say, this is the best we have today. This is the best we know now. But we got to be willing to adjust as we get more information. And we're getting more information faster than we ever have. It's unbelievable how fast this information's coming. I mean, if you're a doctor now, 2,300 white papers a day coming out, you can't keep up. You got 50 patients to see. I got responsibilities. I'm doing surgery. We have the tools now to become great partners with our physicians. And so, I would just tell people, get online, start trying to find people that kind of fit with your style, your image. If you come across, and there's millions of these, a podcast says everything you need to know about protein in 10 minutes, ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know everything. Nobody knows everything there is to know about protein. Learn to understand clickbait and who's trying to sell you something and who's really giving you good information that you can trust and begin to rely on. And they won't agree. A lot of these, a lot of people won't agree. Kind of figure out who fits with your lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And as you begin to have some positive experience, you begin to put your blood work in and your DNA work, and as Claude begins to know me better, it gives me better recommendations, better questions, which helps me build my orchestra with even smarter people that I can rely and trust in.
It's good. Second question. If there's one person that impacted you the most on this health and wellness journey, briefly, who's that person and why?
God. Unfortunately, it was a guy named Dr. Peter Attia.
Outlive, great book.
Yeah. About, last week, unfortunately, he got affiliated with all this Epstein stuff. And I know people are like, well, I don't go down those paths very far.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to read the details.
Yeah.
What I see, they're not good. On the surface, probably not good.
Right.
It doesn't mean that everything Peter T ever said is wrong.
Bingo. There you go.
I can tell you some great pastors that have fallen and have made incredible mistakes. It doesn't mean every book they've ever written is wrong. I've got to be smart to say what's here that's usable. I don't worship any of my healthcare orchestra guys and women.
Right.
I rely on them as tools. And so, Peter T has been extremely influential for me. Hate what's happening to him. Hate all of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to impact me because I'm simply trying to look for who's got the best information. I lay his information against 10 other people, and I try to come up who's got the best information out there. So,
he's good though. I agree with you.
I hate what's happening. I hate it for the industry. I hate it because a lot of people are going to go, see, you can't trust those people. Well, people are human, and I'm not advocating anything. I don't even know the details, don't want to know. But Peter T has been extremely influential in my world of getting healthier. I know I'm a lot healthier as a result, in part, of things that I've learned from him.
I completely agree. I mean, great research. I've read Outlive, really kind of changed my perspective on life. Don't know all the details and everything going on, but doesn't mean I have to discredit all of his research. So in closing, in 60 seconds, if you were going to elevator pitch someone on why they should take longevity seriously starting today, what would you tell them?
I can only relate it to me personally. I wasn't willing to look in the mirror and know that I could have a positive influence in my world, in my city, in my family, and know I was making bad decisions. It'll take longer than a minute, but the saddest story in the Bible to me is King Hezekiah. He had everything. And prophet comes to him and says, hey, I got bad news. He was a good king. In his last 15 years, his ego got in the way, and he started doing things that ego drove him. Prophet comes to him and says, I got bad news. Enemy's going to come. They're going to haul off your family, your kids. They're going to kill some of them. They're going to make your sons slaves. Everything you got here is going to be gone. And he says, at least it won't happen while I'm alive. I made decisions up until I was 60 years old. It was basically King Hezekiah. your family, your kids, your grandkids, your legacy. You've made decisions that are going to kill you long before you should be dead. And they're the ones that are going to have to deal with it. Your wife's going to have to deal with it. Your wife's going to have to bury you because you made bad decisions. I got two options. I either say, at least it didn't happen while I was alive. Not my problem. Or I look in the mirror and I go, I can change this. I have the ability to change this, to be able to have a bigger, longer, better impact on my family for another 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I chose the last. Wished I would have learned it at 30. Was 60 before I woke up. But I think I got another 40 good years. Much longer answer your question. Hopefully that's an elevator going to the 55th floor.
That's a good answer, and that's a good closer. Gary, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for what you're doing for the city.
Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to attending the conference, going and hanging out. I think we can do it. Why not? Why not?
Why not us?
Why not us? I love it being the light on the hill. I appreciate your brotherhood whenever it comes to our relationship with Christ. And thanks for unpacking longevity with us.
Thanks for the interest, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's Adam, Backpack Theory Podcast. Until next time, thanks for tuning in.